This episode of Shockwaves is sponsored by Universal Studios' Halloween Horror Nights in Hollywood. Immerse yourself in a living, breathing, three-dimensional world of terror. Now through Saturday, November 5th. Visit them online at HalloweenHorrorNights.com/Hollywood to learn more about the event and buy tickets.
Okay, and welcome to episode number 21 of Shockwaves. I'm one of your hosts, Rob Galluzzo. Sitting with me is Mr. Elric Kane.
I've never been better, Rob. Thanks for asking.
Did you have some German you learned for us in the last week, or did you totally
still working on
fumble the ball again?
But in the meantime, ich bin nicht ein Vogel.
What does that mean?
I'm not a bird.
Not the deep end of horror, though.
Not yet. I'm working on that.
Shockwaves is officially old enough to drink.
Yeah, that would be good.
21. That would be Ryan Turek.
Hi.
How's it going, buddy?
Good.
Great. And last but certainly not least is Rebekah McKendry.
Woo!
Eating pizza.
I'm eating pizza.
Right on.
Yeah,
Pizza
it's good
party.
stuff.
The pizza of choice at Shockwaves is Lucifer's Pizza.
Right.
It's got extra peppers, which I totally
Spicy.
love.
Spicy
It's
sauce.
really intense.
Something from hell?
Yeah.
What's the tagline? Hot as hell?
Hot
Something
as
like
hell,
that.
yeah.
Can't remember.
Why don't we kick off by thanking our Canadian friends
Yes.
for the shout out and Rue Morgue?
Rumor.
Oh,
That was great.
yeah, that was awesome.
Because
Pleasant
it's
surprise.
fun to get an actual print. There's something thrilling still when you see something in print versus just, a plug on a Facebook page or something.
Yeah. Super
Very cool. Very nice.
Very
of them.
appreciated. Thank
Don't
you.
know who did it, but thank you, whoever you are.
All right.
And
Well,
that
there's,
issue is now on stands as Frankenstein on the cover.
Cool. It's a
the
cool
one.
issue, too. It's their, whatever
just
their
picked it up, right?
It's their
Physically?
Halloween fiesta
Yeah.
episode. It's really cool.
All right, guys, our energy needs to come up.
Yeah.
Let's it's been a big week.
All right.
Oh
It's
my
been
god!
a long week. We're in the midst of October.
We've been watching movies. I
We've been watching movies
lived at Beyond
nonstop.
Fest.
All right,
Why
let's-
we feel
Beyond
this way.
Fest.
We're about to butt heads. Let's talk Beyond Fest, baby. What did you guys see? Because I only saw one other movie, and
Let's
I know
start
Ryan
with something
was
positive.
there. Okay. What's
SADAKO versus KAYAKO.
Was
I can't
so
wait.
fun.
This movie is balls out amazing.
It's
Really?
it's so
how-
self-aware but funny and smart at the same time.
Yeah, it is. I don't know. I walked out and I was like, how did they get Freddy versus Jason wrong and get this so right?
Yeah.
You know?
It's just like everything you want it to be.
A good chunk of the movie is a Ring movie. A good chunk of it is a Grudge movie, and then they collide.
But the
And-
two, they're linked because of two
One person's
psychic
cursed.
investigators.
Yeah, one person is cursed, another person's cursed, and they literally come together and they're like, "So my curse has to fight your curse," and it's like, "Oh my god, I love you."
Now, do they don't spoil it too much for me.
Yeah.
Oh, they fight.
They
Do
fight.
they fist fight?
No,
Kinda?
no,
They like
fight in a way.
they like
Tell us
curse
too much.
fight.
Yeah, they curse fight. It's like they fight physically in a way that is very true to both SADAKO and KAYAKO.
Like a TV falls at one point. All
right, cool.
But
All right.
is it laugh out loud stupid? Or is it
No,
is it still
well,
creepy? Or what
parts
is it?
of it are really funny. But at the same time, there's some really good jump scares
It's
in
a
there.
very-
There's definitely times that I was like, holy shit, that was frightening.
It's a very knowing mashup.
Mm-hmm.
There's some very tongue-in-cheek kind of lines that occur. Some very snarky kind of things. It's really, really fun.
But-
I genuinely I didn't expect that at all.
I didn't either. I was expecting it to be kind of cheesy and campy and almost kind of like crocodile versus octopus, like sci-fi quality. But it was really well done. And my favorite characters, the way that the Ring Curse and the Grudge Curse are connected is they're connected through these kind of psychic investigators who help people with curses, kind of Zelda Rubinstein-ish from Poltergeist. And one is kind of like this hipster guy, and then it's a small blind girl. And they are hilarious together. And just some of the most random lines are just amazing. Like there's one point where she's sleeping and she wakes up and he just looks at you and he's like, your dream is right. Your parents are never coming for you. And it's just like, where the hell did that come from? But the whole
sounds like a
audience
Fulci
lost
film.
I
it.
know. I love it.
It is
I love
great.
it.
And you know what? What it does is it delivers the kind of throwdown that you want.
Mm-hmm.
When they come together, it's like, okay, that's exactly what I wanted to see.
Yeah. It's exactly what you wanted Freddy versus Jason to be that it never was. sadly.
But it was, but it's going to be on. But what's that?
I like Freddy versus Jason. Whatever.
Yeah.
But it's releasing directly to Shudder on December something. It's December of this year, so it's coming straight to Shudder, which is a bold move on their part, and I kind of like it.
Great.
Well, Becca told me before we were on air that like for example, one of the things is they don't know what a VHS tape is.
They do, but they don't know how to watch it because they get the tape, and she's like, "What the fuck?" They end up going try to find it. So it's definitely equally aware of the advancing technology because it's still it centers on two. I think they're college students. They're students, so it's still like two young girls.
Was it by one of the original directors of any of the series? Or
no,
new person?
I don't think so. New person.
But
I can't wait though.
But I'm curious to see how much of it takes the piss out of Rings, because Rings has kind of like the techno-forward kind of thinking. So I'm curious to see if they have some of the same in-jokes that they'd had in
now
this.
delayed Rings?
Yeah. They saw Sadako vs. KAYAKO and they were like, we need more Grudge.
We got to have more Grudge. More Grudge.
That was one of the positive things over at, Beyond Fest.
Why don't we talk Dawn of the Dead since we were both there for that?
Yeah. Dawn of the Dead 3D.
Yeah. Which again, here's the shocking part about the movie. Well, first of all, I just loved seeing it on the big screen because I've never seen Dawn of the Dead on the big screen.
Okay.
And the reason being is because Richard Rubenstein owns the rights here in the U.S. And apparently it is so expensive to rent a print of it that it never screens.
So ridiculous.
Now, the 3D version, did it need to be 3D?
Well, no, it didn't need to be 3D. No, my initial takeaway from it was completely unimpressed. I just didn't. I mean, I went in with an open mind. Mind you, this thing has been in the works for like 2 years.
No. I looked it all up.
Oh, did you?
It's been in the works since 2007 or 8 was the first report of it.
Right.
And then in 2013, I think Deadline gave an update that it was coming and that he spent $6 million doing this conversion.
That's so crazy.
And said it like this is the same quality that went into Titanic. And no offense, but look, I fucking love Dawn of the Dead. Yeah. But I don't know if it's like in what world a $6 million conversion is worth it.
Does it take anything away? Because that's
no,
the danger.
That's the thing. The 3D is done well.
Okay,
there's no glaring flaws or anything like that, and it doesn't take away from the film because the film is fucking brilliant.
It's great. It's just a great movie,
but it's just completely underwhelming.
There's a moment that's just like holy shit.
There was
there's got to be right.
Well, there are 3 sequences in which things actually either explode or come at you, but Romero didn't intend this to be 3D, so it's a very shocking, quick moment. When the head explodes in the tenement at the very beginning of the movie, everybody goes whoa because it's guts everywhere, or there was a glass pane that explodes outwards, and you're like whoa.
Yeah,
but
you blink and you'll miss it.
But you blink and you miss
it.
Cool, exactly. Yeah.
But you'd miss it if you.
It just adds depth, because the way Romero, shoots, it's got a very, there's always depth and layers to a bunch of the, scenes. So if you're looking down the stairwell, and looking at Fran down at the bottom, there's just a little bit of depth to it.
But that means he's already doing the job of a director. He doesn't need another layer of depth because he's done it in camera.
Yeah.
I saw because I was at the New Beverly All-Nighter and I saw multiple people came after leaving 20 minutes into Dawn of the Dead saying, fuck that. They literally like people like that showed up. They're just like whatever, and they left kind of like what they didn't want to.
Boring.
Now that said, some of us had seen Dawn because you know how hard it is to screen.
Yeah,
Phil 2 years ago, at the 2 years before it, the All Night, and I don't know how he did it, so I'm assuming it was legally. It was an international cut. It was the Argento cut.
Yeah.
Well, they don't promote the titles that are going to be shown there.
They don't, and that could be part of it.
How the way around it.
So some of these people who left might have had just seen it, and not been in your position where it's like
I'd never seen it that way, and to me it was just cool to see.
It's a great game.
And if it means that 3D version, I'm a big advocate of home 3D, so if that comes out, I'll totally buy it. I just want it to come out in America, and I don't know if it will.
Did he have a Q&A there? Was he there?
He was before and after. I left because it was just way too late.
Did he say anything about it? Right?
He just hinted.
I didn't stick around for the after show.
From what I heard, he hinted that there's a company that wants to do it, but he's really aiming for theatrical on this. And I wrote a review earlier this week on the site saying, that's great. It's cool that it's in 3D. I think it's great programming on Beyond Fest's part, but I wonder if there's a demand for Dawn of the Dead in 3D theatrical. You know what I mean? Like, this was started before Walking Dead existed. Right. This 3D conversion, and then World War Z has come and gone. I
read a couple tweets after the screening, and a couple of people brought newcomers to the show, and they were like, "Well, if anything, the 3D brought in a new friend who had never seen, or brought in a friend that had never seen the movie." And I'm like, you would have brought them anyway if it was just regular Dawn of the Dead.
Yeah.
So, it's like, I don't think it's going to bring out anybody.
But I think your point
bring an awareness to it
about how Romero shoots is it's really pointless to put any film in 3D that wasn't shot for 3D. Yeah. Like the whole point of shooting in 3D is you're thinking about the guy. That's why I'm dying to see Friday 13th Part 3 in 3D, because you see the gags coming a mile away, but you're seeing them in a lame 2-dimension.
Yeah. 3D.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying there's no point doing it otherwise. Like a post-convert, if you're making a big Hollywood film and you decide before you release it, okay, I get it, you're milking more money. But old movies where there isn't, like you said, demand, very strange to me. But
and I mean, the other thing is literally at the same time that all this was going down, I think it was Dread Central where I saw it. In Italy, there is a Region B 4K Blu-ray coming out of the European cut, the theatrical, the extended, but it's only Region B and it's only coming out in Italy.
Yeah. And everyone will buy that if he doesn't get on his shit,
Well, I mean, I can't. I don't have all region.
Depends on who has a 3D region-free
Blu-ray 3D.
player.
And it's not the 3D one's not on the Italian. It's actually what's his name? Renf. It says Nicholas Winning Renfin presents Dawn of the Zombie 4K restoration. So
WR. It sounds like a perfume label.
All right. So what else did you guys see at Beyond Fest?
Bad Batch.
Bad Batch. That's
Bad Batch is Anna Lily Amirpour's follow-up to Girl Walks Alone, which I loved. Girl Walks Alone,
Girl Walks Home Alone.
Girl Walks Home Alone, very simple premise, very beautifully shot, tight movie. Even though I had a very long cut at one point.
Very stylized.
I feel about this film exactly as I felt about Neon Demon. It's she's spending all her cachet at once on the second film that's very inaccessible. It is. Somebody had mentioned that it was kind of like Southland Tales, and I really agree. Whoa. It's not as confusing as Southland Tales.
I had no idea what was going on in Southland Tales.
Everything is in this. It's like throwing everything at the screen in a way. Now, moments of it was never boring. It was definitely had moments of being kind of hypnotic. Other moments like complete self-indulgence. Like to which I turned to someone after the movie. I was like, this will be the worst movie to ever hit Netflix streaming in the history of movies. Because it is a big screen. It's like beautifully shot for a big screen. But anything beyond that, I don't even think I'd get through myself maybe 10 minutes if I was watching this at home on streaming. It's got some pretty interesting stuff. But for the second time this year, Keanu Reeves is my favorite thing in a movie that I didn't particularly love. Just like in Neon Demon, where I loved him in Neon Demon, loved him here. They're very similar to me.
And
I think.
Knock Knock.
Yeah, Knock Knock. I love.
You're just a big
Keanu. Hey, and John Wick.
Fan.
He's on a roll. Dude's rolling.
I'm gonna make a movie about Elric knocking on Keanu's door, and Keanu's like, "Come on in."
It'll happen.
Just take it from there.
But I feel it's funny. Like it was a great Q&A. It was a really good screening. You won't have a better screening than that. And I think it was definitely giving a mixed vibe, but it's pushes like art house. There's some cool cannibalism things. Jim Carrey has a really fun, like kind of recurring cameo. He's almost like a silent actor in it, and kind of crazy. It's just one of those movies you're like, wow, like cool that somebody out there is making this. Same as I felt with Neon Demon. It didn't connect to me, and I'm probably its target audience.
Wow.
In terms of aesthetic and stuff. So, I thought it was interesting, but I want to rewatch Girl Walks Home Alone.
Yeah.
This I probably couldn't, but her Q&A was pretty amazing. Some people tweet about what she said, and she gave an answer about filmmaking, breaking down the process of a film to the Shawshank Redemption and every stage of it. And I'll put it in something in print because it takes too long to say, but it was probably the best analogy I'd ever heard, and everyone was going apeshit when she did it because it was pretty funny.
Great. She's super. Yeah,
she's super cool.
She's super cool.
And I still think I really do think if they give her a chance, this film might, in my opinion, maybe hurt. I don't know. I think she could make an awesome movie. So I dug it. And then the second film that I followed up on, which I loved,
I thought it was amazing,
is Autopsy of Jane Doe.
Autopsy of Jane Doe I saw Saturday night at Beyond Fest, and dare I say, it's my favorite film of the year so far. And by far, I think it has some of the best jump scares I've seen of the year so far.
So brace yourself, horror fans who listen to the show.
That's cool, guys.
Because you decide if you trust Turek or when me and Becca agree. And literally you have the moon going dark for a year because it is my favorite film of the year, too.
What?
Yep. I freaking loved it.
I don't trust when the both of you like a movie.
Dude, this movie was
here's the thing.
It was one of the most crowd-pleasing films I've ever seen.
Yeah, like everyone in the audience loved it.
It was a total look. Here's the thing it did that film I haven't seen a film do for a long time is it gave you the art side of filmmaking, gave you the craft, but it was a total roller coaster of entertainment, and everyone was like jumping and laughing.
Yeah.
And your two protagonists, Brian Cox. Do you like have you ever seen Blood on the Moon? It appears quite black. You know, as everyone knows, and Emile Hirsch play father and son.
Emile Hirsch knocking girls out of Sundance parties.
Hey.
Well, you wanted to bring up a...
Into the Wild, Emile Hirsch, Killer Joe. Anyway, they play father and son who work at coroners out of their house. And the cool thing about this movie is do not look up the plot. The nicest surprise was knowing nothing about it, feeling like a movie is going in one way, and then it takes you to a whole nother type of movie. And to me, the craft of this movie by the director, Andre Overdahl, who had only done
Troll Hunters
before as only feature.
Oh, wow.
Which was quite a long time ago, too, actually, a few years ago.
And a completely different
totally.
Yeah. I loved this because it was very small, and it felt small, but at the same time, because, I mean, the majority of the movie is isolated just to the morgue.
Yeah, just to their house in the morgue.
And, I mean, this isn't blowing anything, but it's just there are two morticians. They get a weird body as they start the autopsy, and that's not blowing anything. It's in the title. As they start the autopsy, they start uncovering things about the body that are really weird, and then weird shit starts happening. But the majority of the movie is isolated just to like the morgue and their office right next to it. But that said, the scope feels huge and just some amazing jump scares in there.
What are you talking about? The scope feels huge.
I was saying, like, it feels like a big movie.
What?
Did you see it at Fantastic?
No.
Oh.
I saw. Here's the thing. I saw it by myself.
Could be a really different experience, honestly.
And I thought I liked the twist. I thought it was interesting. I thought it was like, okay, it's a contained horror film with a little refreshing twist. I just felt like it wasn't quite fully what it needed to be. Like, I don't feel like it lived up entirely to its potential. And that was
could be not seeing it with the crowd, because I mean some movies are literally made. I mean this was
it's not even about seeing
People
with the crowd.
Cheering.
But it's not seeing with the crowd. I'm actually glad that I saw it without a crowd,
right?
Because I'm seeing it with no like awareness to what it was, no information, no nothing,
right?
Just going in, sitting down, watching it, and
but dare I say that's not how movies should be seen.
Oh,
so you could
say
that you're watching.
Though I agree with you, Kane. I think that the majority of the people see movies like Ryan does.
They see movies in a way that's boring. Look, we all do see.
Elric, I'm sending over a pack of 30 people next time you need to watch
the day we
to your house.
Honestly,
so you can
the
see
day
it with
we start making movies for iPads, the day we start, and we have.
I didn't watch it on an iPad.
No,
I
I'm
saw it in
saying
the theater.
the day. Okay, that's right. But the day we start making films for a smaller level of thing, to me, that's when it's Bret Easton Ellis says, "Oh, cinema's dead." It really is at that point, because we got to keep making with the intention of showing something on a screen with a group of people,
and then seeing it by yourself on home video, going, "Huh, that didn't really live up to expectations."
We'll
hold
see.
up.
I think
they are doing
history will mark you wrong on this
Autopsy
one.
of Jane Doe doesn't need the cinema police to come down on me about how I viewed it, but it's an okay movie. I didn't hate it. I didn't love it. I just thought it was okay, and I'm still trying to wrap my head around what everybody saw at Fantastic Fest that made them all come out.
Yeah,
and go,
because it won the Jury Award.
Number one horror movie. Number one. And
the number one thing I walked away with was saying, and this isn't. I'm not trying to diss Lights Out, because Lights Out still had some fun stuff. This felt like what a film like Lights Out should have, if it had longer to probably develop its script and everything, could be, because it was like laugh, scare, jump, dread, laugh, jump, scare, and literal roller coaster.
Yep.
And I'm not trying to be cinema police, but I wouldn't have felt that.
Hashtag cinema police.
But it's true. I wouldn't have felt that in the same way without an audience, because that's a level of, somebody has a great line. Brian Cox has a couple lines where literally everyone's going, fuck yes, in a horror film somebody fucking said it. Right. And at home it's not the same, because you just go, huh. Yeah. At home you smirk and go, cool. Mm-hmm. It's a totally different thing. So I cannot say enough. It's different from February, my other favorite, but that's never coming out anyway, or not this year or last year. But I love that for a different reason. That's a perfectly crafted, dread-filled film. This is different. This is like what I think. I kind of likened it to that. You're always chasing that high of a movie the way you used to watch movies.
Like a
and this
fun,
did that.
like ideal viewing. And this was it for me too. And the audience
and
was
a lot of people I
eating
talked
it
to
up at
afterwards
Beyond
too.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm in the minority. I know.
Yeah. When
I've
I came
seen
home,
Midnight. It's going to be out early December.
early December from IFC.
Yeah. Don't know if it has any theatrical. Or
they are doing, according to the press release that they sent around today, they are doing a theatrical with it.
They should.
It might be limited, but yeah, there
so
is
Ryan
something.
Can see it.
I saw. I don't know if anybody else saw The Monster, which is Brian Bertino's new film.
Wanted to. Looked cool.
Oh yeah, couldn't make it out for that cinema, please. All right,
Yeah.
I get it.
I'll catch it at home.
No, it was. I caught that was my first film at Beyond Fest, and it's it's an interesting film. But watching Bertino did Mockingbird for us. I think Mockingbird's a pretty interesting film.
That's the clown one, right?
It's the clownish
It's
one.
one of those
Yeah.
found footage.
Clownish. And I'm a big fan of The Strangers. The Monster is an interesting little experiment because it's one part mother-daughter drama, kind of like deadbeat alky mom who, she's
the mom in that movie?
Huh?
The actress in that movie?
The main actress.
I saw the
blonde.
trailer.
Yeah, the main girl.
I thought it was like an older sister or
No,
something.
that's her mom. And then she obviously had a kid at a very, very young age. And that becomes part of the friction that plays out. And basically what happens is these two are on the road. They hit something along the way. They stop. Their car breaks down. And then there's just a monster in the woods that preys upon them and anybody who happens to drive by and help them out, Not entirely successful. I thought there was some good mood stuff that worked really well. The monster is kind of cool. It was weird bringing the kid with me because my girlfriend was working that night, so I brought her along, and she was about the same age as the girl in the film, and she I came out and was like, what'd you think? She's like, I really liked it. It felt like 5 hours, but I loved it. And I was like, you know what? You're dead on, kid. I'm going to use that for a review.
Is that because it doesn't have a traditional act structure?
No, it's just because Bertino, I don't think Bertino wanted to direct a monster movie. I think he wanted to tell a drama about this mother and daughter more than anything, and so there's a lot of time spent on that. It was a mixed reaction coming out, and I didn't hear too much. It was actually kind of a somber reaction coming out of the theater, but I think that comes out soonish too, or I think it's on DirecTV now, and then it comes out.
Okay.
And so, if you guys want to see what the director of the Strangers is up to, he's making some interesting, kind of very personal movies.
Did he write this one? Or you're not sure?
Don't know.
I'm just curious
I
if
have
it
to
was something that
double-check
came across his desk or something that he was passionately
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
But I mean, like Bertino, I'm always tracking just because I think he's super fascinating, and what he did with The Strangers was fantastic.
Yeah, he strikes me as someone who will make a great film. At some
Yeah.
point.
I think it's just the time in between each film, is kind of long.
Yeah.
So.
Did you see The Girl with All the Gifts?
I haven't.
That's the one. I
supposed to
didn't
be
see
seeing that
that
soon.
one,
Yeah.
but it's the one that afterwards I saw all of these Twitter posts about how absolutely amazing it was. It was the most beautiful thing ever. I didn't see it because I thought it was like standard zombie film, and apparently it's not. And the novel that it's based off of, it's based off a novel, is supposed to be absolutely phenomenal. But everyone was telling me that it was quite possibly the most beautiful thing that they've
How
seen
about
in
we
forever.
our new show is just us reviewing movies we haven't seen that we missed and heard we're good on Twitter. Can we have a spin-off show?
Is that we need to check that one out because I heard really good things.
Did
about
anyone
it.
see Raw? Because that's what everyone was talking about. Okay, I haven't seen it, so I want to hear.
Raw's
Good.
great.
It's brutal.
Raw's great.
It's really brutal. And I mean, there was obviously all this hype about people fainting in the aisles and when they screened it in Europe and things like that. No one fainted at Beyond Fest. But that said, it's really
It's a coming of age film.
It's
right?
a coming of
First,
it's a coming of age film about a girl, a vegan.
She's a veterinarian student.
She's a veterinarian student working. She's at a vet school. Her older sister is a couple years ahead of her, and during a kind of hazing ritual, she's forced to have a piece of like rabbit liver or rabbit meat.
Yeah, it's rabbit.
And she's like, "Oh, gross, no!" And then she winds up eating it, and then she starts to go through some cannibalistic changes.
Yeah, it's like it awakens something like feral in her, and she becomes obsessed with meat.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all you get.
That's what you get. And if you like films like Ginger Snaps, if you like films like obviously It Follows and Babadook, that kind of art. Okay, then this is definitely going to be for you. It plays very much on vampiric tropes.
Yeah.
So if if you've seen those movies where I'm angsty and I'm going through vampirism, you kind of get a little bit of that.
like
but
Martin? Or not really?
Well,
no. Like someone who's actually
Oh,
changing
really?
into a
Yeah,
vampire.
like it's got that kind of Ginger Snaps. Like she doesn't understand if she's just coming of age or in this new environment of veterinary school, or that she's becoming a cannibal.
Can you see why people would have fainted, or is it more just people who've never
No,
seen
I
horror
mean
films?
there's a lot of slicing of skin and meat.
Your grandma
and-
fainted.
Yeah,
basically.
yeah. I mean,
No. You know what? It's
pretty brutal.
Yeah, Ciara actually turned her head a couple times.
Yeah.
She was like, "I'm down for the strong stuff, but this is gnarly. I can't watch it.
It's pretty intense. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. Did anybody go to the New Bev? You went to the New Bev for the all-nighter.
I can rock it quick.
Do it quick.
It was pretty awesome.
I can't believe
I saw the lineup and I was like,
okay, well, the first movie
God.
brought the fucking house down because it's all-time favorite, but I haven't seen it in like 10 years. It was the best looking print I've ever seen of any print in the history of movies. Like this 35 millimeter print starts and you go, is that a DCP? It was, and I asked afterwards, it was Fox's or whichever company's actual archive print that they make copies. And this was Race with the Devil. So Warren Oates and Peter Fonda at their absolute most fun. That movie is so fucking fun and it's so of its time. The director did, Walking Tall sequels and Cleopatra Jones, all sorts of crazy stuff. That was a lot of fun. The second film I really struggled with. My least favorite subgenre is beach party movies. Yeah. Like when I saw all the trailers, my heart sank and I went, I don't even think I could get through a beach party movie. It was The Horror of Party Beach. I kind of call it cucumber dick mouth. It's what it looks like, a giant monster with 12 cucumber dicks coming out of his mouth, and it's really just the worst monster I have ever seen until the next movie. Yeah. Rawhead Rex is the third movie. Yeah. So you're talking about the guy who had never seen Rawhead Rex. Yeah. Yep. And it was like a week after you told me to see it. Here it comes up, and I'm like, oh my God, is he doing this just to punish me?
Did you giggle when he broke up the china?
I did. There was a lot.
Did you scream Turek when he pissed on the priest?
That was pretty cool.
And his plasticine face with receding hairline.
Seeing this movie for the first... This is a good movie to see in an all-night movie thing because it does wake you the hell up because it is so ludicrous. The movie, the monster is his face and eyes don't even move.
It's pure plastic.
You're just watching this going, this is a terrible... And yet I will say, Clive Barker's writing voice does still come through on certain lines that you're like, oh, that's good. Like some of the relationship stuff you'll actually notice amongst a pretty badly made movie. This is not a movie I will watch again. But the coolest thing about it, as soon as it ended, I stepped outside for a second. We're taking the little breaks, and James Franco walks by me, and I just turned to someone and go, James Franco just watched Rawhead Rex with us. Expect a shot-for-shot remake very soon. You know what I mean?
I hope he busts up
So he was
China.
there for the whole. He was there for this whole thing, which is really cool. I don't know if he made it to the end. I didn't see him at the end. The next film, the fourth film, which was just total reinvigorate a lot of people, but put a couple to sleep. Bay of Blood, Mario Bava. It's on my 31 list for Halloween. Twitch of the Death Nerve. Again, almost as good as the Race with the Devil print. Perfect archive print. You're like, how can a film print look that clear? So anyone who kind of disses film prints is, not seeing a brand new print. A brand new print is a phenomenal thing, and that film is gorgeous, and the kills are so good. And there's some boring moments, drama in between, but when the kills happen, everyone, you bolt upright, which is saying Friday 13th should go back and rewatch that, copy it initially, come back, copy it again, and remake your movie, and call it, Friday 13th, Twitch of the Death Nerve, and we're gonna have a good movie.
Now we're talking.
After that, I was about to leave. So it's Bay of Blood ends, and I'm like, all right, well, I guess this is usually when I leave these things, about 4 a.m. I'm like, okay, I'm good. And then they put Slaughter High on. And I just, and my legs just froze, and I went, I guess I'm staying the whole night. Because this movie was like, when Ryan mentioned it a few weeks ago, this was my first slasher film. Like before Friday, Jason, anything. Came on TV in New Zealand. I loved this movie as a kid. Didn't watch it for the last, 15 years or whatever. I can't say I love it still now, but man, I have fun with it. The kills are fun. Damn. The movie, the acting is so funnily bad because everyone's
4 a.m.
Funnily bad.
Everyone's so old.
You should have woken me up, Elric.
It was pretty. No, it was really cool. I still want to know why.
I still have my Slaughter High alarm on here. It's for anybody who says, Ryan, it's playing somewhere.
It's a gesture signal in the sky. It was really fun. And then, so at that point, I'm too tired to even drive home. And then Tix comes on, and which everyone actually was probably the biggest crowd pleaser in terms of audience.
Of course it was.
At that time. And in fact, almost everyone stayed this time. And that's never happened there. They said it's usually a quarter of the people stayed. The whole theater was still full. Tix, I got a little bit of shut-eye in there, not because I don't like it, but because Becca watched it at Jump Cut not long ago.
Oh, yeah, I screened it at Jump Cut.
And so it was fresh in my head, but it was fun because we had also seen the Hellraiser 2 trailer before one of the films. So it was a bit of a Tony Randall double, and it played great, and it looked good, and it was a fun film. But it was a really great event, and if you have one of these in your town with great programmers, like whether it's Exhumed Fest in Philly or New Bev out here, it is so worth your time. That was a really good time. I had fun, but it was worth it for the first movie, Race with the Devil, pristine.
Wow,
some really funny shit in the movie. I know, so good.
Super cool. I had a couple of quick titles, but only one that I want to spend time on, and the rest I'm just going to shoot off really quickly. But much to my surprise, because it's so weird trying to find things like at regular retailers these days. I know most of us just order on Amazon or whatever. Our friend Brian Sauer, Rupert Pumpkin Speaks, posted that Best Buy had an exclusive. They were putting out The Ghost and Mr. Chicken, the Don Knotts comedy.
Oh my God, I haven't seen that since I was a kid.
And it came from outer space in 3D, directed by Jack Arnold, who did Creature of the Black Lagoon. Best Buy put them out last week for $7.99 each. So much to my surprise, I went. They had them, picked them up. And I love them both. Ghost and Mr. Chicken is a really fun. I caught it at a double bill at the New Beverly with Abbott and Costello Meet Frankenstein, which is one of my favorite horror comedies. So that kind of sets the tone for that one. And It Came from Outer Space was of its time, I will say that. I watched it in 3D, and that part, some of the gags are cool, but it's
you guys, busting balls on Horror Party Beach over here, and over here, It Came from Outer Space. There was a time, a nice decade of fun horror.
Listen, I give it
fun
respect.
monsters. I know. I'm just saying.
When they're singing,
of course it was from a time.
And if you want to see some scary movies from that same decade, you can check it out on Blumhouse.com.
Yes, right.
She wrote the article
movies.
about it.
Yeah.
The other one, this one's available now from Scream Factory. I'd never seen it. I heard so much about it, and I think I can't remember who, but one of you guys spoke about it a few weeks ago. Is Lady in White?
Oh yeah.
I mean, I knew nothing about it. I've seen the poster, and with little Lucas Haas, and I thought it was terrific.
Yeah,
it's
like great.
A long time.
It had a very like Stephen King vibe to it. It felt like a Stephen King novel playing out.
And it was definitely one of the ones that was really accessible when I was a kid, even though that it's got really mature scares and themes. When I was a kid, I loved that movie.
Yeah, it's like a kid-friendly movie, but then there's some dark stuff going on there, like a child murderer is part of it. It's like this whole mystery about who this guy is and that's killing children in town, and he kind of gets they kind of blame it on the janitor, the black janitor, and it's really, really good. I really liked it a lot, and it's weird because it's written and directed by a guy named Frank LaLoggia, who not only wrote and directed it, but did the freaking score, which is totally like a John Williams-esque score. And Scream Factory's release has 3 cuts of the film. I have no idea what the difference between all of them was. I watched the director's cut because that was the one he did an intro on, and I assume that's the preferred version of it. But that's an excellent release. And last for me, the one that I have to talk about is Exorcist 3. Comes out next Tuesday.
Nice.
And I watched both. There's 2 cuts on it. It's the original theatrical from a new 2K scan and a director's cut, which is basically, this is one of those films where you've heard about all 3. Oh, I heard they added the exorcism, and it's not exactly what, it's not like Legion, the book, and all this. But to finally see it, because there's a 5-part documentary on the second disc that really lays out everything about how the picture came together, and it's pretty fascinating because William Peter Blatty, they gave him final cut, but not really. Yeah. So there was a lot of drama behind the scenes.
Oh,
and
yeah.
Different people.
You got to put an exorcist in it.
Oh my God! But
I
you know
also
what?
remember hearing from the AD of that he halfway through the shoot he was getting 1 shot a day.
Yeah, he was.
And he couldn't handle the effect shots, so they had to basically just move him aside, and ADs were finishing the movie.
Well, it's interesting because somebody like Brad Dourif's in it, and here's I'll try to be brief about it because obviously I want you guys to check out the disc for yourselves. But the thing with the director's cut is it's not like what they did with Nightbreed and Halloween 6. A lot of the elements are lost. So there is a dip in quality for certain sequences where it becomes a VHS master and then back and forth. But you get the gist of it because in the original Blatty cut, Jason Miller's not in it at all. It's all Brad Dourif. Right. And Brad says on the interview that he thinks he gave a better performance for the first shoot, and he was kind of like bummed that they lost all that footage, but understood, because what happened was he did it. Then they're like, yeah, we need an exorcism. We need Jason Miller in this role. So they brought Jason Miller on to redo the whole part, but apparently he had a really bad, they're very candid about it, he had a really bad alcohol problem, and he just couldn't do it. Right. So they shot some stuff with him, put in Brad Dourif, etc. So what the original cut is interesting, and there's a few interesting character moments in there, and it's fun to see like what originally was intended. It does end like abruptly for no reason, and it's a really underwhelming ending. So the theatrical is actually better.
So watch that
much
first.
Better.
If you've never seen it, hit that first.
Well, no, if you've never seen the movie, the theatrical is the one to watch. That's the best movie they made. If you're a diehard fan, I would check out the director's cut just to see what was different and then go back to the theatrical. They made the right call to make the best possible movie.
It's a super fun sequel.
But really great release. So definitely check that one out.
I'm just going to, this is more of a pimp than a review, but I watched a couple of exploitation films. One, I rewatched, Canadian exploitation films. Pin, I'm not going to talk about it right
wonderful.
now. Big fan of Pin, but you can hear, I just recorded the projection booth on Sunday, and so that will be like an hour and a half episode of us just talking about Pin. So I'm not going to talk about it here. Really fun. I'm talking about it with the guy who runs the exploitation website for the last 10 years and is an expert on Canadian horror. I followed it up that night with the one that we had been talking about since the show started. Somebody recommended The Brain to us, a Canadian.
Oh, I remember
and
the
I'd
box
never
cover
seen The
on
Brain.
that because it looks like Elmer
exactly
from
Elmer.
Brain Damage.
Let me just put it this way. It's on Amazon Prime for free. All you need to do is watch the first 10 minutes. It is the most kinder trauma shit you will ever see. It is preys on all those childhood fucked up fears with weird teddy bear stuff and like the squirmy tentacles. Everything is in the first 10 minutes. And then it just kind of keeps going. And there's long scenes of people driving cars and in car chases and court marks because there's no adrenaline whatsoever. So it's not a great horror film. It's not as good as something like The Kindred or as goopy, but the first 10 minutes was like exceptional exploitation filmmaking. So a lot of fun. Anyway, so yeah, check out for that episode in a couple weeks of that if you're interested in Pin. Watch Pin before. It's actually a really classically directed film.
Really quick before we wrap up, I wanted to mention Channel Zero debuted on Sci-Fi this week.
Yeah.
With season 1, I think it's called Candle Cove.
Yeah, Candle Cove.
Yeah, which is because each season is going to be based on a creepypasta. Mm-hmm. This show is the best thing that's happened to sci-fi since Battlestar Galactica.
Oh, thank God.
Cool. High praise.
It is amazing. It is weird. It's abstract. It's really disturbing. It allows quiet moments to happen, which is absolutely amazing.
And not sci-fi. That's awesome.
And it's not sci-fi. It's pure horror. And it's Nick Antosca, who is the showrunner. He was part of the Hannibal team. And he brought in Don Mancini and a couple of other Hannibal people, and this show is really messed up.
Is there a way to watch it without cable?
I don't know. You should take a look.
It's
on Sci-Fi. It might be on Sci-Fi. And then really quick too, we lost a makeup effects guy today. John Bullish. So, and if you guys don't know, he did all sorts of stuff from X-Files to Lost Boys and on and
Buffy
on.
and
Buffy and so.
And he's popped up a lot in almost all these Scream Factory releases.
Yeah.
So he's always been there to talk about the film.
Yeah.
So tremendous loss.
Yeah.
I'm really sorry to hear that.
If you aren't watching the Exorcist TV show, you need to.
Oh my God, please do.
Yeah.
It's so good.
I cannot believe that some people aren't watching it. I love it.
I don't want to get into it, but the ending of episode 3 could not have been more timely.
Oh, it's still on my DVR.
I haven't seen
watched
3 yet. I'm caught up on American Horror Story, but I haven't seen 3.
Doing it when I get home.
Yeah, me too.
It's pretty, just wait. It's pretty hardcore.
Ooh.
Okay.
And I do have
Bye, guys.
I do have some bad news to end before we throw to our guest. The Tension Experience did call me out, and they did force me to, on Saturday night at 10 p.m., I will be experiencing.
You're going to Ascension.
So for our Haunted House episode next week, I will be able to report back to what happens to me if I return.
Excellent.
Great.
Nice.
Can't wait.
Yeah, I'm super excited about our guest today, guys.
Yeah.
Yes.
It's going to be awesome.
All right, here we go.
It's no secret we at Shockwaves are huge fans of horror, on film, on TV, and especially in person. Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood brings together the sickest minds in horror to immerse guests in a living, breathing, three-dimensional world of terror. Now through November 5th, 2016, Halloween Horror Nights features a new slate of unrivaled film and television production quality mazes, frightful scare zones, and a fully reimagined terror tram experience, all uniquely themed to today's most definitive horror properties, like The Exorcist, American Horror Story, Halloween, Hell Comes to Haddonfield, Freddy vs. Jason, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, Krampus, The Walking Dead, and The Purge election year. These mazes are scary as hell, and we will be telling you about each of them in graphic detail over the next few weeks. As Southern California's most extreme Halloween event, Halloween Horror Nights is designed to taunt, terrorize, and torment guests as they navigate the darkness from one frightening maze to another. Tickets are available for purchase at www.halloweenhorrornights.com/Hollywood, including a front-of-line ticket option that enables guests to enjoy priority access to each of the Halloween Horror Nights mazes and the Terror Tram, a theme park ride. Advanced purchase is recommended as events nights will sell out. Halloween Horror Nights at Universal Studios Hollywood. Nobody does Halloween better. Visit HalloweenHorrorNights.com/Hollywood now for more info and to get your tickets.
Okay, and welcome back to the show. Last week, you actually heard us talk quite a bit about going to Universal Halloween Horror Nights here in Hollywood, California. And now this is going to be super cool. We're going to get to talk to the guy behind this, the creative director and executive producer of Halloween Horror Nights here in Hollywood, Mr. John Murdy.
Hey,
welcome
to the show.
Man. And,
nice to be here.
And I mean, you have a little history with Ryan. You know him for a couple of years. And way back in, I think, 2008 or 2009, I interviewed you for my Psycho documentary.
Yeah, so that's right.
We took a little walk through the Bates Motel, which was a lot of fun.
That's got a lot of plays on YouTube, by the way.
It does, right? Which is so weird. But the thing that I took away, even when I met you back then, is you love this stuff. You're a horror fan.
Yeah.
And before we delve into the park and the history of how Halloween Horror Nights works, we always like to hear about your humble beginnings when it comes to falling in love with monster movies. So
that's a crazy story. I'm
you're
happy
a monster
to tell.
kid, yeah. So when did you first kind of discover this?
Yeah. So here's how it goes. When I was 4, at least this is the story of my family. My mother showed me Frankenstein because it was back, in the early 1970s, and it was when every town had a horror host, like Elvira, that would have a Saturday, afternoon, show that they would play the classic Universal horror movies.
Where were you from, by the way? Where is
I'm an LA kid. I'm from LA.
Okay.
So she let me watch Frankenstein, and when she came back into the room at the end, I don't know what she was doing while she let me watch Frankenstein. I was crying. And so her immediate reaction was, oh my God, I've traumatized my son. Why did I do this? But then as she started to talk to me, she realized that wasn't the case. I was just so sad at how bad these people treated Frankenstein. I immediately identified with the monster, which I think is the great power of all of the classic Universal monster movies, is they're all kind of, in a way, a Shakespearean tragedy.
Sure.
Frankenstein never asked to be born. He was stitched together from the parts of, criminals and jolted to life with electricity. And then through the entire film, what's he doing? He's trying to find his place. He's trying to belong. He's trying to find a friend. And the real monsters in that movie are the people. So for whatever reason, at 4 years old, I immediately identified with the monster. But from that moment on, I was hooked. And when I realized that you could meet the monsters by going to Universal, and this is back in the early 70s, that was like, the ultimate thing where I can meet Frankenstein. I can go to, Castle Dracula or some of the old shows that used to be in the park. So I was just obsessed with particularly the classic, and to this day, it's the only thing I collect in my house. I have a monster room with thousands of pieces of that memorabilia. And it's funny, I just showed my 3.5-year-old daughter Frankenstein this last week. I wanted to try it out.
How'd that go over?
Same reaction.
Really?
She's like, they're so mean to him.
Wow.
Yeah, so pretty cool.
Wow.
It runs in your blood.
And then as far as the haunt stuff, I started doing haunted houses in my parents' garage when I was 10. And it was, the first one was 1977. And this is going to sound incredibly dumb and geeky. And it was both. It was a Star Wars themed haunted house.
Whoa.
That is amazing.
And it was, I don't know if you guys, do you remember when Star Wars came out, how you couldn't buy anything because they didn't anticipate the hit it was going to be?
Oh, yeah.
So you couldn't buy costumes and you couldn't buy, masks and stuff. So we made everything out of paper mache and chicken wire.
Wow.
And we did it that year and it was this big hit. So I did it for 4 years in my parents' house. And the last year I did it, my dad looked out the living room window and he saw a line of 200 kids. And this is the 70s. We went through the house, And I was playing Norman Bates that year, and I was in the bathroom, and I had a real butcher knife. Oh. And my dad, I could see this look came over his face, and he just went, "My God, we're going to be sued." And so he shut me down at that point.
Wow. So it goes way back.
Yeah,
that's
amazing.
amazing.
I just want to recount one of my favorite John Murdy memories is when I was working as a journalist and they invited us out. Universal invited us out for one of the maze tours, you know? And I think it was one of the first times they had done it. And I was like, oh, good. Now we get to see the corporate suit who is behind these mazes, whatever. And then John comes out with like a, just like a denim jacket, a Universal Monster tee, a Wolfman cane. And I'm like, can we be friends? Can we just be friends right now?
There's all these promo shots back in the days, and I'm wearing like a Black Flag hat, and nobody knew what the bars were, so it was cool.
No, it was great. No, but I mean, but that, what you're talking about, your upbringing and your love for the genre, it bleeds through every wall and every nook and cranny in each maze, I mean, like, it really comes out right down to the details. It's incredible.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that, I should say, obviously I don't do this alone.
Yeah.
But my primary partner is a guy named Chris Williams. Yeah. Chris is art director and production designer, but Chris and I, design and produce all of this hand in hand from the original concept on. And Chris is exactly like me, except he grew up in Northern California, so he was doing the same kind of stuff just on a farm, you know. But we were into it from the time we were little kids.
And when did you first get hired at uni to?
Well, I first got hired at uni in 1989 as a tour guide on the Universal tour.
Wow.
Oh my gosh!
I was a tour guide.
What were the key fixtures at Universal at that time?
Well, some of them are still around. Like the Psycho House and the Bates Motel, and but it was back in the days where the tour was like almost 3 hours long, and you would stop and you'd get off the tram and you'd give the special effects show. And I think at that time, it might have been Back to the Future themed. And then you get back on the tram, then you go up to the lost, relic prop plaza that I don't know if anybody remembers, but it was a halfway point where they had all these props from Land of the Giants and The Incredible Shrinking Woman. And then you get a new group of people and continue on. So I started there way back. I started with Universal Creative in the early 90s as a PA when we built like E.T., going way back.
Wow.
And then I stayed, most of my career was with Creative, and then the last thing I did with Creative was the Mummy Ride here in LA. And then shortly after that, all of us got relocated to Orlando at that time, and I got a call from at the time the general manager of the park, who said they were interested in bringing Halloween Horror Nights back, and they'd had kind of an erratic history with it. It actually started in LA way back in the 80s, and then it was gone, and then it was a little bit in the 90s and gone. But they'd been out of it for at least, I think, 5 years at the time. And I remember I asked everybody I knew out, that was associated with it in Florida and et cetera. And everybody was like, don't do it. LA is the most competitive market in the world, So I did it.
And what was I remember, I think the last year before they went dark, there was a Clive Barker maze, there was a Rob Zombie maze, House of a Thousand Corpses, and there was another one. Was that just before they took a break, or did that?
Yeah, I think so. That my partner Chris was the art director at that time, so he did those mazes. And actually, I remember going through them, and they were really good. Yeah.
What was the original incarnation in the 80s? What kind of an event was it?
I think a lot of it had to do with the tram, because the tram was like the big attraction, but there were a lot of shows and things like that too.
Was it still like all IP, or like brand based,
Not
or was
so much.
it?
I think that's really, if there's one thing that Chris and I brought to the event, it was that idea of doing what we call living horror movies. Was going out and licensing, the properties that fans love and trying to bring them to life movie quality. And that was always our goal with the event was, if I am a fan of horror movies, what I would want to experience is I'd want to go to Camp Crystal Lake. I'd want to go to the house from Texas Chainsaw Massacre. I'd want to, feel what it's like to walk through those environments. So that was really, our kind of master plan for the event, was to try to, take the movie studio that pretty much invented the horror movie, at least the monster movie, and bring those properties to life movie quality. And that seems to have worked.
Yeah.
And is it the challenge of taking on those properties what gets you excited year after year? Like once the season wraps up and you start to look ahead to now
coming
2017.
Right now, we're already doing that.
So looking ahead to Halloween 3 and all the stuff you're doing next year. Halloween 3.
So
I'm hoping. I'm
just
sorry.
putting it out there.
Here's a weird, real quick,
3.
weird Halloween 3 thing. Yeah. So, our fans are so passionate, and we're lucky. They're so loyal and dedicated to our event and support it every year. But they also sometimes give us things. They'll just show up with gifts. And I was giving a behind-the-scenes tour to a contest winner from, I think it was from Scare LA, this past week, and he showed up with a Halloween 3 gift that he made. And it was tiny little miniature masks of the 3, silver shamrock, and it was awesome. I mean, it was beautiful. It was all fan made. So,
well, I got to say, we went through the first couple of mazes with you a couple weeks ago, and then, like, in talking to you, we're outside for about 15 minutes with you, and you were stopped maybe 3 times by groups of people for photos, which I thought was really interesting for someone who's behind the scenes of something that obviously meant so much to people.
Yeah,
you know, which is.
And I was going to say, coming out of Elric's question about this, is it, these kids who are approaching you and stopping you, are they diehard theme park people, or are they just like
Horror Nights fans?
Horror Nights fans.
Horror Nights fans.
Wow.
Yeah, they're their own separate set. You know,
that's amazing.
A lot of times it's kids that want to do this for a living and they want to know how, because you can't major in scaring people.
I love that so much.
You know, I think that's the big, like, parents will come up to me and go, my kid, is obsessed with this. And I'm a real estate agent or whatever, and I don't know what to tell them. I don't know what to tell them to study. I don't know what to tell them to do. So a lot of times they're just, and sometimes I had a kid hand me a letter. His dad asked me, I think it was like the first weekend of the event this year. He's like, my son wrote you a letter. Would you, take it? And I was like, of course, a kid wrote a letter these days. That's amazing. It was handwritten. It was 3 pages long.
Wow.
And what was really cool about it was, he didn't necessarily want to do what I do. He wanted to be a screenwriter. He wanted to be a horror movie screenwriter. But he was inspired to do that because he came to Horror Nights. And the other really cool part of it is he was, we've done a lot of music-themed, haunted attractions over the years. And he was talking about how, being a kid, I think he's probably about 13. He said, I never knew what Black Sabbath was. I never knew what Alice Cooper was.
Oh, that's a victory.
Your mazes, I know. I was so proud. And he's like, your mazes turned me on to that music. And he goes, but then I went through your maze you did with Slash, and it made me really interested in learning the guitar. So I learned the guitar, listening to Slash's album. So I immediately texted Slash, and I was like, hey, dude, this is... I'm sure you get this all the time, but this is really cool. You need to hear this. And he was like super touched by it and everything. So I saw the kid again and I was like, hey, by the way, I sent that to Slash. So it was pretty darn cool.
That is really cool.
That Alice Cooper maze was by far one of the favorite that I have done. And I was I was talking with one of the marketing people there who was telling me that the horror movie themed ones definitely like do the best for you guys, because I was like, I loved the music.
That Alice Cooper maze was #1 that year.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, okay, that's what I wanted to hear, because
which to me was a huge triumph.
I love those ones because I don't know what I'm expecting, what I should expect when I go into it. Like with the Alice Cooper one, the house, it actually looked like a house.
Yeah.
On the exterior, and I was like, I have no idea what I'm going into. But that one was amazing.
I had this conversation with Alice, and I should mention Alice was my childhood hero. I probably wouldn't be doing what I'm doing today.
He's a showman.
He married my 2 favorite things, rock and roll and horror. And I worshipped Alice Cooper as a kid. And I used to write him letters when I was a kid, and I was in the Black Widow fan club and all this stuff. And so when I finally got to work with Alice all those years later, I was talking to him one day, and he was saying, when I was making Welcome to My Nightmare, I always pictured, there was a kid somewhere in a dark room with like an 8-track, with headphones on, and he's listening to my album, and he's envisioning like a movie of my album. And I was like, Alice, that's me. I just did that. This is what the maze is, because it was an original maze inspired by his concept album. And I was like, I'm that thing you thought was going to happen. It just happened, and I just did it. So it's a trip to. Of all the things I've done over the years, that one in particular, I think, will always stay with me, because, that literally was the guy who I had a 6-foot, poster of in my bedroom that my mother hated. And, I knew I still to this day know every lyric from every Alice Cooper song. Yes. So to get to take his family through it and to get to know him, and I didn't think that would ever happen. That's pretty cool.
When you're dealing with an IP with somebody like Alice Cooper, or dealing with the Texas Chainsaw Massacre or Friday the 13th, how hands-on are you with the creators if they're available? Like, how much creative leeway do you allow them?
Yeah, I mean, it really depends. It's a case-by-case, but that is always first and foremost the goal. Yeah. A lot of times we'll try to get the creators involved before we get anybody else involved, because if they're, along for the ride, and without exception, every time I ask anybody, whether it's Ryan Murphy this year with American Horror Story, or Guillermo del Toro last year with Crimson Peak, or James Wan when we did Insidious. Every time I'll sit down and meet a filmmaker for the first time that we might be working with, I always ask them the same question first. Have you ever been to horror nights? And they, without exception, they always say, yes, I love it. I come every year. And that, the pitch is going to go well, at that point, because you're like, oh, cool, you get us. Somebody like Guillermo, very involved. I've been talking to Guillermo before we did Crimson Peak, probably for like 3 years. There was one day I got a message like, meet me at Arts Deli at like 7 a.m. I think it was the day after New Year's. It was like January 2nd or something. And I was like, 7 in the morning, And we talked for like 3 hours about this maze we were going to do at the time. And then he's a very busy guy. I think Crimson Peak got pushed up and it was going to go into production. So we had to go, we're not going to be able to do what we said we were going to do. But then we ended up working together. But he had a lot of ideas, and a lot of them were in the maze. Ryan Murphy had a very specific idea this year for American Horror Story. There's a character, I don't know if you guys caught it when you went through, it's in the Murder House section. But on the show, in Murder House, Jessica Lange's character says early on that she has 4 kids, and you only see 3. Yeah. So he said, it would be great if you brought to life the 4th kid, because the fans are driving me crazy every time, I do Q&A. They want to know about this 4th child. He's in the maze, and you get to see him. And so a lot of times they're very involved. James Wan was always very involved. Eli, all of them. Yeah.
Was there any last minute additions, or how did talk about how this year came together? Because this year, over the last year, we saw The Walking Dead go from a Halloween Horror Nights fixture to a permanent fixture,
right? Yeah,
which I would imagine opened up a slot for you, because it was a fixture for year after year.
Yeah, we've been working with Walking Dead since 2012.
Yeah. So that allows you to bring in some more IP. So talk about how this year came together and the kind of decision to bring back the Titans of Terror.
Yeah, I think a lot of it was born out of last year doing the original Halloween, revisiting that. We hadn't done it since 2009. Yeah. And it was a huge hit with our fans. I mean, huge. And so that really got me energized about, oh, man, what if we had Freddy, Jason, Leatherface, Michael Myers. The one thing I know about those properties is they are true evergreens. I mean, the awareness level with our fan base of those characters, even though a lot of these movies, some of them go back to the 70s, everybody knows them, everybody loves them. We really looked at this year, having been doing it at the time we just finished our 10th year, so we were going into my 11th year of doing it. I was just like, let's just do everything. Let's just try to give the fans and it really was focused on the fans. Let's give the fans every single thing they keep asking about, because it doesn't matter what year it is. They always ask about, hey, are you going to do Freddy? Or hey, you're going to do Michael Myers? American Horror Story had been requested for years. Krampus, ever since that came out, immediately people started tweeting me about,
that was my favorite
Krampus.
maze this year.
So we just went into it and said, let's just do it all. Let's just do it all in one year, and try to give the fans every single thing that they could possibly want. And that seems to have worked. I mean, I don't know how we'll ever top it. But
so I'm curious, out of the 3 that you brought back, Michael Myers, Jason, and Leatherface, and Freddy, which maze is coming out on top this year in terms of fan favorites?
They're really, it's kind of like pick a week. You know, every week there's a different one, or a night. Every night of the event, there's a different one that the fans respond to more than any other. It's that's what I think is cool about it. It's really balanced. Like, one night it'll be Exorcist, the next night it'll be Freddy vs. Jason, the next night it'll be Texas Chainsaw Massacre, etc. American Horror Story, on and on. I think of the classics, I think because Freddy and Jason are together, that's kind of if you just judge by demand, I think that's probably like the biggest of those ones, just because for our fans, they've never seen them together in the event like that. So.
What's the most successful on a scare level? Because for me, it was Halloween 2. Well, the jumps and the timing with the musical cue, just like the original movies, was perfect. Yeah. And also with the maze, obviously, sometimes it's like your timing walking through a maze, right? Like, you were great because we had him.
I have my way of
slow us down.
Slowed us down, and we got all the best jolts.
Which is funny, because then we went to a maze after without you, and like the 2 girls behind me
were getting everywhere.
They were so scared that they kept pushing forward, and like as fast as possible. And I'm like,
I know, I don't want to miss it. I don't understand why they go so fast.
Don't do that. They want to miss the scare. And I was like, no, I want to see Leatherface.
But it does, like when you watch a horror film, it's about the scares or which of the scares. And I feel like the same thing with Horror Nights. There's some of them where they just land the timing so well. Often it's from being blindsided, like a magician. Yeah. You're making us look over here. Freddy vs. Jason, you get a couple of them because you're looking at one of them. Oh, yeah. And you don't expect the other one to come at you.
Set them up, knock them down.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But this year, which has seemed the most successful overall?
To me, I think Freddy vs. Jason does that the most successfully because it is just relentless. Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's just bam, 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 bam. Especially when you get to the boiler room towards the end. We just kind of stacked the deck with so many Freddys and so many, You
made Jasons. A better film version than the film.
Well, it is pretty much an original maze. Yeah, it really is. There really isn't. It isn't pulling scenes specifically from FVJ. Yeah, right. It's kind of, and that's something new we're trying this year. I've always been intrigued with the idea of making a sequel that doesn't exist. Because you see that happen in comics, and you see fans do it on the internet. So Chris and I were talking. I'm like, well, why shouldn't we do this? Especially because our fans demand us to constantly do new stuff, but they're totally fine with us bringing back properties as long as we change them and do different things. So with FVJ, we pretty much made up our own version of that. With Texas, we pretty much made up our own version of that. We kind of came at it when we sat down with the people we deal with Toby and whatnot. We kind of pitched them on this idea of like, hey, I want to make a sequel that literally doesn't exist. It's set 5 years after the events of the first film. Because, the second one happened a lot later. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And by the time you get to the second movie, they're a very successful catering company. They're winning awards for their barbecue. So we were like, well, what if we catch them where Chop Top's just coming back from Vietnam, and they've turned the gas station into a barbecue restaurant, and it's kind of the middle point between the first film and the second film, and we just make our own version.
That's cool.
So that's something we've always wanted to do, and this year we started doing
that. Seems a way to stay really interested on your part.
Yeah, it's fun because we could do things like, like Leatherface's room. You never really, in the original film, you never see where he sleeps. So when I sat down with Chris, I was like, don't ask me why, but I think his bedroom looks like a 1950s kid's bedroom with a Cowboys and Indians theme. Mm. So if you have time to take in the wallpaper in that room, which you probably don't, but it's like 1950s vintage wallpaper of little, it looks like Precious Moments, Cowboys and Indians. Mm. And, he also has a doll collection. That was another thing that Chris and I put into it where, he would have a collection of his little dollies, but all of them would have skinned faces of other little dollies that he would have put onto their faces because that's what he does, Yeah. And when the actor in that room, he's not actually jumping out or trying to scare you. He's just playing with his dolls and trying to put one of the faces on you, which is really creepy and off-putting.
That's really creepy.
Chop Top's Dayglow, blacklight room was awesome with the console. Where did you find the console record player, by the way? Every single person who walked through past it was like, I want that. I want that.
Well, I remember
the room was great,
that would have been
everyone
like my grandmother's house when I was growing up, and everything that's in that room is in my treatment. Every single thing, down to the Wizard blacklight poster. I literally had that. I was like, I had this poster when I was a kid, and it was this wizard holding an orb, and my props people found it, the wallpaper, Chris is really good at finding vintage wallpaper, so that trippy wallpaper examples like that were in the treatment. What's cool with that console, I found out the other day, it opens. I was like, oh, look, it opens. And there's actually records in there. Don't ask me why, but the Flash Gordon soundtrack, I don't know why, but it's sitting in there. It's like whatever thrift place they bought it from, I guess it came with the Flash Gordon soundtrack because it's still in there. I was like, oh, look, it's the Queen soundtrack from Flash Gordon.
You've added to Chop Top's character right there. Just like that's what he listens to on repeat is the Flash Gordon soundtrack.
And it's funny because I just talked to Bill Moseley and he's coming in a couple weeks, so it'll be fun to take him through there.
Has anyone ever wanted to be in it for a night or something? Like people like Bill Moseley or somebody ever asked you, can I slip in there and play a character?
A lot of people have asked, but very few have actually done it. There's only one person who's ever actually done it, and it's Eli Roth.
Oh, wow. Which one was the Hostel?
Hostel, yeah. Cool. When we were doing Hostel, one night Eli texted me, and he's like, I'm going in. And I was like, that's all it said. And I was like, what do you mean you're going in? And Eli kept everything from Hostel. He had when we were working together, he's like, oh, I have the client helmets and he had everything. So he decided he was going to go in the maze. So I was in some other part of the park when this was going on. So I had to make my way down there. And by the time I came down, he was coming out of the maze. But he played every scene that had a client. He was in every scene. He was in there for over an hour. And then he went backstage and hung out with the cast and took pictures. And when I caught him, he was just coming out. So I gave him this big bro hug. And I was like, oh, my God, I can't believe he did it. And I immediately went, oh, and you have blood all over you. And I don't know what he used for it, but I have this jacket to this day. I always joke with Eli about this, that it's still got his blood on it. I can't get it off. And every once in a while he'll go like, my mom has a really good recipe for getting your, blood stains out, and you should do this. And I still have a jacket that's got Eli Roth blood on it.
That must have made the fans
Eli Roth.
Shit. That's
Eli
really cool.
But he did it. He did it. He really did it. And back in the old days, before my time when Chris was running it, Rob Zombie did that in the original Maze they did with Rob.
I wanted to delve into a little bit of the creative process, if you don't mind, because this is a year-long job. You guys are planning all year round for the next one. And I think it's fascinating that, like you just admitted, sometimes you'll do a sequel to something, like, let's do the middle movie. But then something like Halloween 2 this year was
so specific.
You were like, you are a
one.
fan of Halloween 2 because every detail, and we go through the movie scene for scene. Yeah. So I mean, what is the process like with you and Chris? I mean, do you guys discuss like, okay, I think Halloween 2 should be just freaking Halloween 2. Let's go through, let's put people in that movie.
Yeah, well, Halloween was so successful the previous year, and we hadn't done a lot of Halloween over the years. We'd only done it twice, compared to things like, Nightmare on Elm Street, which we'd done 4 times, and Texas, and we were, I wasn't ready to walk away from Michael Myers. I was back in, I even played it last year. I went into the maze one night. I usually do this every year. I'll do like one night where I'll just go in and be a character for one night. And last year I did it in Halloween. We had that kind of made-up scene that Chris and I did that was that really weird mirror maze at the end where we just had, it was inspired actually by Orson Welles' film not Touch of Evil, Lady of Shanghai, the mirror scene. Exactly. Ending, and that was literally the inspiration for that scene. And I just wanted to be Michael Myers one night, so I went down to wardrobe and I was like, hey, give me a Michael Myers jumpsuit. All right, give me a mask and give me a knife and etc. And I rode on a golf cart. Took the mask off so I could see, but I rode and I parked backstage and I was like, oh, now I have to walk through the park, but I got a whole Michael Myers outfit on. So I went in and I was in that scene. I was probably in there for about an hour. And when we finished the event, I was just like, I just don't want to walk away from Michael. It's just really great having Michael, be part of the event. And I love, of my all-time, contemporary horror films, Halloween would be way up there on my list. So we started thinking about Halloween 2 because it is a direct sequel to the first film. It literally starts, it picks up exactly where the film ends. So we, while it's pretty odd to do a 1981 sequel to a, famous horror movie, that's a pretty odd choice. But we thought we could make it work, and it was a pretty short conversation. It was just like, hey, why don't we do Halloween 2? Okay, let's call Malik.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you're walking through and you hadn't seen Halloween 2, you just think it's part of Halloween 1, and then people like us are going through going, oh, I can't wait for the hot tub. I can't wait. And it was everything satisfied. Every moment.
Elric actually said that to me right as we were walking in the maze. I hope there's a hot tub, and there was a hot tub.
Somebody's like, I hope
and there's the pirate kid.
Yeah. Pirate kids. People asked about that, and then I love the way you brought the poster to life. And I don't want to give it away, but
and it smelled like pumpkin.
Cool.
That was now being not a journalist and not having the preview, because the previews would be great. I would love to take a peek behind the curtain. I'm going in clean now, so I don't have any expectation. And going through, I was like, oh, it's Halloween 2. We're walking through the pumpkin. I started screaming, we're walking through the pumpkin. And my girlfriend's going, this smells like pumpkin spice. This is so beautiful. That was just such a good surprise. It was so great.
We've done that over the years too. Like I mentioned, we did it in Halloween last year where we wanted to create our own ending, but still be in the spirit of the film. And to me, I always loved the opening titles of Halloween. I loved how the camera slowly pushed into the pumpkin, and particularly in Halloween 2 where you go in and it's the skull, So the thing that when Chris and I were designing it, I just kept talking about, I love that poster. God, it's amazing no one's ever done a mask of that. How is that possible after all these years that no one's really done a mask of that skull pumpkin? So we came up with that idea of just, I won't give it away, but we prominently feature that mask.
Good stuff, yeah.
And you mentioned it, so I got to ask, smells. Because,
all around.
Let me tell you,
there's some nice smelling mazes this year. There's some really pleasant.
And there are some god-awful
The Exorcist one made me gag.
Well, that's good because it's vomit. It should make you gag.
When we walked in, I never imagined what the Exorcist house smelled like until we're in there like, oh my God. But I think Leatherface, okay, you walk in and it smells like barbecue. So you're kind of like, all right, maybe I'm a little hungry, but whatever. But there is one room, I don't know what a dead body smells like, but I'm pretty sure that's the smell.
That's exactly what it's called, yeah.
And it is horrendous.
Yeah, it was brutal. So the Krampus one smelled lovely, though.
Yeah, the Krampus one, that smells delicious. It smells like gingerbread cookies in one part, and it smells like Christmas spice.
Yeah.
And Halloween has that, pumpkin scent going through it. Exorcist, particularly the beginning, when you first walk into the house, we wanted a scent that just smelled wrong. Like, you would imagine that if you walked into that house, that it would smell. Like, I don't know what a demon smells like, but to me, I think I'm trying to remember what we settled on, because I'm not even sure I know right now, because I sampled those scents like months ago.
There's actually a company that just makes these scents.
Yeah, there's several.
They'll send you like samples.
Yeah, it's like perfume samples, and they come on these little, just like perfume. And I always have to take them out of the office, because there's no way I can open those things in the office. Everybody would throw up.
So you're standing out in like the common area.
Yeah, I usually go to the back lot. I go to the movie back lot, somewhere out on the back lot, and I'll just sit there and go, oh, vomit. What does that smell? Oh, God, that's awful. We'll use it, But yeah, Exorcist has vomit. I don't think we actually turned the machine on, though, because it's so, I don't know what they did with their vomit scent from the last time I used it, but it's even worse, than I remembered it from the last time we did it. And I think we used it. There was that scene in Nightmare on Elm Street where he's force feeding the girl and she explodes. That's I think the last time I used it. And I think I vowed I would never use it again after that, because it was so bad. So I think in the case of that particular scent, we don't even turn it on. We just have it in the room, and it does the job.
Wow. Well, how early did you start incorporating that element to it? Because then now we're getting into kind of like the whole William Castle, like
smell-o-rama, yeah.
So was that always an early part of the theme park, or did that kind of evolve as years went by on Halloween Horror Nights? Like, what can we do this year? Well, let's bring smells in.
I think the first time we did it was probably right at the beginning. I think it was the first maze we ever did. We found out that there were companies, the thing that most people don't realize, that there's companies that manufacture scents for just regular stores. Like sometimes when you go into a bakery and you smell those delicious fresh baked cookies, it's all fake.
It's the reason that Hollister permanently smells like sunblock.
Yeah, there's stores. There are actually stores that have a signature scent that they make, that they pump in. So these companies have realized that there's a side business in our industry where they can make scents for, haunted houses. And you like read the list, and it's, it's like dead body and dead animal and burning flesh and vomit and all these crazy things. So, we've been doing it since the beginning. I just like the idea of preying on all of our guest senses, because we also do things to break down the fourth wall. Obviously our performers don't touch you, but we find other ways of touching you. We do some of them are tricks I did when I was 10 in my parents' garage. Black industrial thread hanging from the ceiling in a black environment feels like cobwebs, or feels like something's touching your face.
Yeah.
A lot of the gags we do. There's one in there's one in Exorcist. Reagan shoots it right into your face. It's powerful.
That's really clever.
The vomit ones and stuff. But we've always done things to try to break down your fourth wall and physically affect you. So sense is just another. And in Exorcist, we've got subwoofers doing frequencies you can't even hear, that are just uncomfortable frequencies, just to make you feel off. So we do a lot of that kind of stuff.
Talk about a lot of the stories that you're telling in these mazes are kind of straightforward. Exorcist, huge challenge.
Yeah.
And you guys tackled it head on, and I loved it. And what you guys did was really cool and kind of progressive in terms of, I've never seen anything like that.
Yeah, because you don't change rooms, but you move through the scene.
It's funny.
I was curious. Was there a more traditional route that you guys took before was the route you took wound? How many times did it take to get to that point?
No, it went through a lot of iterations, but the funny thing about Exorcist is, it's probably the single property our fans have requested over the years more than any other. I've been trying to get the rights for a decade, and I never gave up on it. I just kept relentlessly trying to get the rights. But our fans, I think in their mind, and I know because they keep saying it to me when I meet them at the event, they're like, "How long did you have that design for The Exorcist?" And I'm like, "Yeah, I didn't have a design." They think that I have, when you're designing this, you're doing like 6 movies at once. It's kind of the equivalent from a scenic perspective and everything else. You don't really have time to willy-nilly, I think I'll design a maze that I'll stick on the shelf for a few years. That never happens. So even though we desperately wanted to do The Exorcist, honestly, we never really thought about how after 10 years. So when we finally found out, oh my God, we're going to get The Exorcist, this utter panic set in because I went back and watched it again, and honestly, I haven't seen The Exorcist. It's not a movie I watch for pleasure. I'm terrified of it.
Yeah.
There's no other movie that affects me like The Exorcist does, and a lot of it has to do with how you grow up. You know, I was an altar boy. My mom's a Catholic theologian, author of multiple books. I spent a lot of time in dark churches at night. And I spent a lot of time watching people who were supposedly possessed yelling at my mother. So I had an inborn fear of that movie. Plus, growing up in the 70s, I don't know if you guys remember the band trailer. Do you remember the band trailer? There was a theatrical trailer for The Exorcist.
Oh, yeah.
That they call it the band trailer because it got accused of being subliminal.
Right.
Having subliminal imagery in it. And it's a very unusual trailer because it's mostly still images and they're negatives, they're reversed images, and they're just flashing. And I think the track of music from the soundtrack, I think it's Night of the Electric Insects. It's a very specific track that's one of the most terrifying pieces of music in The Exorcist. I can recall seeing that on television as a small child, probably 6 years old. It was back in the 70s where, in between H.R. Puffin stuff, they'd play Marlboro ads.
Which was also disturbing.
Jim Beam whiskey and trailers for R-rated horror movies, and they wouldn't think anything of it. That messed me up so bad as a kid. I had nightmares for weeks and weeks and weeks. So I had an inborn fear of that movie. I have a hard time watching it. I didn't even watch it till high school. And then I probably didn't see it for years after that. But when I finally sat down and watched it, the reason I panicked is I thought, my God, this violates just about every criteria we have for what makes a great maze. When you boil The Exorcist down to its core, it's a movie that primarily takes place in a single bedroom with a 12-year-old girl that never gets out of bed. And that's The Exorcist. So for us, that's like we would run screaming from that. That's not something we would embrace. So what I did right out of the gate is I sat Chris down and I go, do you remember this trailer? And I played him the trailer and he goes like, yeah. And I go, that's the maze. I don't know how. I don't know why. I'm not sure what this means for us yet, but somehow we have to do what this trailer is doing to our guests. We have to make them feel what it's like to be possessed, So we ended up, there's 5 bedrooms in that maze. You go through that bedroom 5 times, but it's what happens in between. That's the trick.
Actually, I genuinely felt it was the best design.
That was the one I
seen.
screamed the most at because I'm scarred by, what do they call it? Is it Captain Howdy?
Pazuzu. Captain Howdy or Pazuzu, yeah.
Like those performers that looked like that in between are what scared me the most.
Yeah, and that's the band trailer. That's really, that was the whole inspiration for that, is to try to create that feeling that trailer had. Because actually the bedroom scenes, we're not trying to scare anybody. They're all theatrical. They're all representations of practical special effects. That in a movie, you take as many takes as you want. If you get it right once for the camera, it's good for all time. But in our world, it has to happen every 10 seconds.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to be doing all of these practical special effects that would involve a lot of puppetry and a lot of performers behind the scenes doing things. Just that first bedroom alone, there's, I think, 4 performers offset doing things, you never even see. But nobody's going, it would be silly to go into the scene where you have Father Karras and Reagan and it's, that initial encounter with them and have him turn around and go, blah, It would just be stupid. So they're not trying to scare you at all. It's all what happens in between that scares you.
Yeah. And I mean, there's subtle things like when you go into the last room, the temperature just drops.
Yeah.
You're just hovering. You're like, oh man, I remember that from the movie.
Yeah.
It's also just as a film fan, that's the one I appreciate the most on a level of like feeling the movie again. Even though other ones might have scared me more, that was really, I thought, the best made maze I'd ever seen. I was like,
cool.
Wow,
well, I'm glad you feel that way because, I mean, that I think the worst thing for me would have been if after all these years we got the opportunity to do it and then we didn't. We didn't nail it.
Was that the hardest one to get, everything lined up so you could do it, or have there been others that took even longer?
No, that
was it.
That's the one. I mean, I've literally been trying for 10 years.
Right.
And we finally were able to do it this year. But then, just how to do it, and there's things that if you don't do it, the fans are going to kill you. Even things that aren't necessarily in the theatrical cut, like Spider Walk.
Yeah, that was nice.
Yeah.
These days, everybody thinks that's part of the movie. So we had to try to do Spider Walk, and we had to try to do all that stuff. Obviously the headspin and levitation, and all those things. But a lot of times when you're doing presentational stuff or theatrical stuff, at the end of the day, we got to scare the living daylights out of our guests. So you have to find a way to affect them that way too.
Obviously there's the Hollywood location and there's a Universal in Orlando. I just found out there's one in Singapore.
Yes, there is. And Japan, too.
Japan. How much do you guys coordinate with the other parks? Are you guys kind of all on the same page in terms of Halloween Horror Nights, or how does that work?
Well, we spend a lot of time talking usually about the properties that we're going to do. Every park's different and their audiences are different. Particularly with Mike Aiello in Orlando, we talked at the beginning of this year, which would be like right now, and at the beginning we just said, look, what are you interested in? And he said what he was interested in, and I said what I was interested in, and we realized this year in particular, wow, we're pretty lined up this year. A lot of times we'll do things, and they'll do different things.
Yeah.
This year, for whatever reason, we pretty much wanted to go after the same stuff, and the cool part is we got everything we went after. But the designs are very different. And it has to do a lot with the parks being different. Here in Hollywood, this park was never really master planned to be a theme park in the traditional sense. It was, it's been a movie studio for over 100 years. The theme park was born out of the tram, from 1964. And then it kind of evolved around it. So we're often occupying here in Hollywood, queue lines that don't get utilized at that point of the year, or any space we can find, basically. If you notice, half our event or more is on the movie backlot these days.
Yeah.
So, the physical shapes of these mazes are radically different from what, Mike might be doing in Orlando. So by, that alone necessitates that the designs are slightly different. But the other part I think is cool about that is these days there really are like Halloween tourists that they'll go to Orlando, they'll come to Hollywood, they'll take, vacation time and just travel around the country and see all their favorite things. So I like the fact that if they go to Orlando, their Exorcist maze will be different from ours,
Wow.
So they tend to be pretty different.
And do Singapore and Japan get Halloween Horror Nights, or is it a different cultural thing there? I don't even know.
Well, I would say it's amazing how, I think this just speaks to how popular Halloween has become in recent years. 10 years ago, the thought of having Halloween in Japan, I think nobody would have believed it,
Yeah.
Now it's getting really popular, and it's in Singapore as well. I think Europe is still kind of slowly coming along, because there's still, parts of, my wife's from Ireland, and I've spent a ton of time in Ireland, and, you might go out and maybe you'll wear a costume and go to a pub, but you're not gonna go to a haunted house,
In Japan, are they at all Japan centric? Because that would be fun.
Singapore, very much so.
Really,
there's a lot of local culture, and
that's fun.
So.
I think that'd be cool. There's so many I want to see Hasu because that would be utterly bonkers.
Hasu maze,
the ring.
Yeah, I think they're all. And you do have to tailor to your audience, and the audiences are very different. An audience in Hollywood is different from an audience in Orlando, is different from an audience in Japan.
Have you ever had smaller films that you've loved that you thought would be an awesome maze, but you're just like, I can't do it because no one knows what the hell we're doing?
Like some weird indie
What
film?
are some of the ones that you just know you couldn't do because people would think it's ridiculous? But
I don't know if I would name names because the filmmakers have asked me to do them.
We would love it.
I know. I get asked by filmmakers all the time to do movies I know in my heart of hearts won't succeed purely on the awareness.
Yeah.
Because it really does matter, You do have to find properties that at least they know,
right?
It does make a difference. So I've had so many people hit me up over, the more obscure properties where you just kind of go, oh, I love it, but
sorry,
not going to work as
you're not going to get chugged.
But I did have a picture.
Dr. Giggles,
Dr. Giggles.
No, you had.
I'm going back to obscure Universal horror movies from the 1990s. Yeah,
Ghoulies versus Critters in a theme park. Ghoulies and Critters. So you're not going obscure because you're combining them.
Two franchises.
Now, can we throw out some ideas?
Two obscure horror movies equal a popular horror.
Well, two negatives equal to positive.
They equal a terror tram experience.
There will be no curtains maze though. That's
curtains.
Curtains is too much.
We did have some ideas while we were going through the park though. Exorcist 3.
Yeah.
Now I heard you guys talking about Exorcist 3. I actually happen to like. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Oh yeah, it's a good movie.
But there's parts of that movie that really scared me.
And it's definitely gaining.
And being in a hospital, that would be a good location for a.
No, there are sequels like that I really like, and I think would lend themselves to being a good experience.
And Exorcist 3 is gaining quite a significant amount of popularity in street creds. So.
I know.
Yeah. Don't you make
but
that
I'm always
face,
going to go to the
Kane.
source.
Elric, a two-way pitch, both for Maze and for a Blumhouse film.
Oh, yeah.
On the
way there, we were driving
came up
there.
with this at
I've done it.
We're driving there. We're on our way
Right,
there.
this is going to blow your
And I just looked at him and said,
Murdy, you
oh my
take it
God.
first.
Wait, listen.
I said, oh my God, it's Predator Purge. It's the night of Purge when the Predator comes down, everyone's armed, and the Predator's like, let's do this.
Yeah.
Greatest movie ever.
So we've got
Who doesn't want to watch that movie?
Ryan is applauding.
movie
Come on, man.
and Maze. Let's make it happen for
Predator,
2017.
Everybody's wielding a gun.
Everyone
Predators-
has a gun, and he's like, all right.
right.
I chose the right
Now
guy.
I feel at home.
That's the day.
To me, that would be fun. But,
Predator,
combination ones
Parasite.
Are you guys
obviously-
going to make that movie? Because
this is why we're pitching.
then
This is the
we're-
pitch.
Predator on Planet Purge.
Yeah.
Because I've done a lot of
Planet
Purge.
Purge.
Triple P.
We've been working
Yeah.
with the Purge since the beginning. So.
Yeah, what of the new ones? Because obviously Walking Dead's a no-brainer. Obviously Insidious and things like that. Things like Conjuring, I imagine, will be part of a conversation. But what are the contemporary movies? Anything else contemporary that there seems to be an interest in you guys doing? Not necessarily that you are doing, but what do
most
fans
most
want?
requested positive
While we were standing in line, by the way, I heard somebody ask about a Wolf Creek maze, and I was like, yeah, that would probably be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot of our fans talk about, it's whatever's
Popular.
like Stranger Things. A lot of people I hear talking about that. There's a lot of anything that's out there and is popular and current. They tend to talk about, but then you do get the fans that are like literally like Critters or something. These fans that come up to you that are obsessed with
The Chud maze.
I don't think I've ever had a fan request. I always laugh and go, yeah, we're going to do Dr. Giggles. Because I remember going to a screening of that when I was a tour guide,
that is pretty obscure.
that would be pretty obscure.
Killer Clowns would be fun because of the design.
Yeah,
I might be the only person who saw that theatrically.
Oh, yeah, you might be.
No, I literally, I can remember when Killer Clowns came out, I went and saw it in Brea. It was in 2 theaters in LA.
Wow.
And it played for one night or something. And I remember I was I saw Killer Clowns in the movie theater.
That's amazing.
Well, that'd be fun just because the Kyoto guys would design everything for you. So you could
One of the black light.
And you get the Dickies for the soundtrack, which would be doubly cool.
What's the craziest title that you've had requested where you're just like, oh my God? I don't even know how people request this to you. I just assume they accost you on the street.
How do fans how do fans interact with you?
Twitter. I run Twitter for Horror
okay,
Nights.
cool.
Years ago they asked me to do Twitter, and now it's like this endless, dialogue with the fans, direct dialogue with the fans, because I'm the creative director running it. So, they're constantly, suggesting things. But, oh my goodness, I'm trying to think of
I guess Dr. Giggles is pretty obscure.
Yeah, I've
heard
had sequels to Hellraiser, like Hellraiser 4, really
that's
random
crazy, yeah.
ones.
A couple
Hellraiser
of years
2 I could've
ago,
gotten, but-
somebody said to me, I wonder why they don't do a Jaws maze because they've got the Jaws ride. And then I was like, hell would you do
Sharknado.
a
I'll
Jaws
take it back.
maze?
That's the one. I've had
Sharknado.
that pitched to me more than once.
Okay.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I can.
Well, so what is October like for John Murdy? Obviously you have your duties at Halloween Horror Nights, but this is the busiest time of month for you. Do you have downtime? When you have downtime, what are you doing? Is there? Or is
Well,
it
it used to be. My
nonstop?
house used to be the saddest. Because before I did Horror Nights, I had these huge Halloween parties, and I had a whole separate storage facility to store my Halloween stuff and everything. And then once I started doing Horror Nights, I kind of gave up on that, because that's the last thing you want to do is after you finish building all this stuff is, hey, let's decorate the house, And I'm never there. I'm always at the event, But when I had kids, and my oldest is only 3.5, and my other daughter is not quite 2, but they blessedly love scary stuff, spooky stuff. So I decorated our house this year in September, and every time we are out, they want more. The funniest thing my daughter said to me recently was, and they always want to come to Horror Nights, and they can't. I'll traumatize them. I'll be paying for psychologists for the rest of my life. But I take them during the day, and this year I took them through Krampus.
Nice.
So I was like, but before I took them to Krampus, my oldest daughter kept saying, I want to see Daddy's. She calls it the Spook Show. I want to see the Spook Show, and I was like, okay. So I was like, well, what can I show her that, and I thought, oh, the gingerbread guys in Krampus, they're kind of cute. So I was showing her pictures of that. And she's like, well, how come we don't have those? Meaning our house. How come they aren't out front? And I'm like, well, honey, they're for Daddy's Spook Show. She's like, well, how did you get them? And I was like, well, I have a budget. And she got really sad. And this sad look came across her face. And she goes, Daddy, I don't have a budget. And I was like, go tell your mother. But I took him through Krampus, and she was a little tweaked by Krampus. She was like, who's that guy on the roof? And I was like, well, that's Krampus, honey. And then I realized I can't tell her what Krampus is, because then she's going to have a Christmas.
It'd be like a Gremlins.
And she's already come up to me earlier this year and said, Daddy, Christmas is boring. I love Halloween. And I was like, wow, that's cool.
Success.
Cool. But she wouldn't let go of Krampus. Why is he on the roof? What's he doing up there? And I was like, well, he likes roofs, and he likes to hang out on rooftops. And we got all the way to we have a scene with the snowmen. And we got all the way to the snowmen. I should have thought of this. There's like 6 of them or something, and they're all, looming over you, especially if you're only 3.5. And she was just like looking at the snowman, and she just looked at me and went, no. And I'm like, you want to go? And she's like, yeah. But now she still asks. She talks about it all the time and everything. So, I've spent an awful lot of time decorating the house this year and doing Halloween things with the kids. Had them at the pumpkin patch the other night. But during the event, I'm mostly trying my best to go through it like a guest. I want to go through it like a guest. I'm going backstage a lot and talking to our performers because they're amazing. We call them scare actors or scarectors. But just the physical endurance it takes to do what they do. We did the math a few years ago, and any scene I block or direct for Horror Nights, they're going to do it at least 60,000 times.
Wow.
So I'm always going backstage to talk to our cast and pump them up. And a lot of times I'm escorting around, filmmakers and celebrities and whatnot, and friends of ours that we've met. The cool thing, and you guys all know this, the horror community is like the coolest community in Hollywood.
Oh, yeah.
I always call them the bastard stepchild of Hollywood.
But we're all really tight knit, which I like. Like everybody knows each other.
And everybody's cool.
Yeah.
And everybody's nice, and like opening night was a trip because I was, 1 minute I'm sitting there talking to Slash, and then I turn around and it's James Wan, and then I turn around and it's somebody else. It's everybody I'd known or worked with, Eli. And it's, you see him again every year, you see him at Horror Nights. It's like a reunion when you see these people. And it's so much fun to take people like that through the event because they love it. And it's always amazing to me how much filmmakers get into this. It's amazing. I mean, they get super excited about it. It means a lot to them.
It's closer to the experience of how we watch films when we were a kid and how they affected us viscerally, whereas movies stopped to affect us pretty much for the most part. So now we can go and physically reenact a movie.
Well, I think it has a lot to do with being in isolation when you're making a movie. You're on location somewhere, and you never get that communal feeling unless you go to a premiere or something like that. But then once you've seen it at a premiere, you usually don't get it again. So it's being able to live it with an audience and see in real time their reaction is pretty cool.
I've also been shocked to find the number of filmmakers out here and people who work in the industry who made their own haunts as kids, myself included. Like I built one on my parents' carport that I would make out of trash bags every year, and it's what I did when I was in middle school. And the amount of people, I thought I was weird, and the amount of people who do the same thing.
Well, Mike Doherty's like that, the director of Krampus. I think he still does. He still does his own haunted house every year for the neighbors and everything. But everybody comes in it, I think, from the same place. And it's so funny because it's true of rock stars too. Like at least the rock stars I've worked with Black Sabbath and Alice Cooper and Slash, like the nicest people. They're like the coolest people, and they're fun to hang out with, and they're fun to work with. It's just a joy to work with people like that.
I want to ask you about scaring people because the notoriety, like when Exorcist came out, the first thing I remember hearing about it is the ambulances waiting outside for these films to play.
Oh, they stole that from Frankenstein. That was a PR stunt we did in 1931.
Texas Chainsaw Raw recently, there's a French film there where a couple people just fainted at a screening. What are the worst reactions to the maybe non-hardcore horror people who come to Horror Nights that you've had in a certain maze where people just cannot handle it?
Have you had
how
people
often
faint?
every year does this crazy stuff happening like that?
Well, the thing I love is particularly like with Terror Tram, where they come down on the tram. I love the people who get off the tram and then get right back on. This year we're doing this thing I'm doing with Eli Roth, but with this character Hollywood Harry, this clown character, and they see that character and they get right back on the tram. And I'm like, you came all the way down here, you waited in line, you rode the tram, you got all the way down here only to just get back on and ride it back up top. And so that's usually high
very
five.
Topical this year,
high five to everybody. Yeah, I mean, our chainsaw guys are so good at what they do. They're fanatical. They're like a secret society or something. but they take such pride in what they do that if they, when they start up that thing at the beginning of Terry Tram, if people turn around and get back on the tram, it's like the ultimate, success for them.
But do you have people break down in the middle of a maze,
cry,
and just sit and can't get out and need to be escorted out? Do you have this crazy kind
crying and people,
I just want a highlight reel of all that.
Yeah.
Well, it's
watch it all day long.
But I've seen so many crazy things over the years. One of the most bizarre things I've ever seen was Elizabeth Taylor when she was alive. Liz Taylor came to Horror Nights.
What?
Yeah, and it was. I think she'd
How
only.
old was she?
This is not that long ago. This is probably. I think we were doing Saw. So it was like she went through Saw.
This is already a story for tomorrow, you guys.
I'm not kidding. I mean, I was amazed,
Taylor
and I thought, "There's no way on earth this is going to work." But she went through every single maze, and she was going up to the performers and going, "It's okay, you'll be all right." Like the ones that are all bloody and stuff.
Wow.
You're going to be okay. I love you. And but just the gumption of going through it all, I was so. Blown away by that. I've seen so many things like that over the years, but that one in particular, I was
pretty. Yeah,
I literally watched her coming out of the exit of Saw and just was like, whoa. Elizabeth Taylor just went through our maze.
Liz Taylor is aware of Saw.
Yeah,
I don't know why or how or what.
Well, she was friends with Michael Jackson, so who knows what they did at his place? Because he was into some weird stuff.
And she went through every maze.
That is wild.
I've seen lots of things like that over the years.
All right, so for you, I mean, is it what? It kind of goes back to what gets you excited year after year. But for you, what is the particular personal charge? Is it having fun? Scaring the shit out of people? Is it the construction of the maze and the kind of alchemy that goes into constructing a great maze, or is it bringing the IPs to life?
I think there's a couple of different phases that the design part is really fun for me. Yeah. When you're first conceiving something, and we do it with Post-it notes. We literally, Chris and I will be in my office after we've researched whatever it is we're going to be doing. We'll sit there and we'll write on Post-it notes. I always go through thousands of Post-it notes a year. They should be like a sponsor. But it'll just say characters, environments, and then what the action is. And we'll just kind of put it up on the wall. We do it really fast. We design a maze in under an hour. just put it up on the wall. Maybe we'll move things around. But then once we're kind of locked, then I'll go off and write it. And these treatments are huge. They're 100 pages each, So every year I write the equivalent of War and Peace. Every year. It's crazy the amount of stuff we generate.
And what goes into a treatment? What is the detail?
It's two things. It's written from a guest POV. There's a narrative part of it. So because I want everybody who reads it, it's mostly to get everybody on the same page. It's going this is what you should feel, smell, et cetera, as you go through a maze. And it's written from a guest POV as if you're going through the maze. But then it also has a really technical breakdown scene by scene. So it'll have scenic, props, lighting, audio, and it'll be down to the audio in particular. I spend a lot of time on audio. It'll be if it's The Exorcist and we're using Night of the Electric Insects, it'll be from 0.56 seconds into the song to 1 minute 20 2 seconds. It'll be that specific, and then I'll give all that material to Chris, and that's his Bible for the design package. And then the other thing I think is cool about it is everything's by hand. Nothing's by computer. Everything we draw for Horror Nights is by hand. So we have a stable of production people that usually work on movies and TV shows that work for Chris. They moonlight for us during that time of year, and they draw elevations for every wall, every section. And that drawing package is all by hand, still all done by hand. That whole process of the initial creation part of it is really fun and exciting for me. And then the process of seeing what our performers bring to it is also, I think, the second part of it is when you've, I still to this day, I direct every performer in a maze, I direct every one of them. And that's hundreds and hundreds of them. But it's important to me that they hear it straight from the proverbial horse's mouth, that I'm literally standing there with them going, okay, this is what you do. Because it's live theater. It's not a ride. It's not a perfectly, you're not on a ride vehicle where everything is choreographed into the millisecond. It's like what you guys were talking about earlier. It's really the luck of the draw when you're going through a maze. It's all timing. So we have a mantra in Horror Nights. It's a new show every 10 seconds. And that's what we really try to, from the very first time we're spending any time with the cast, particularly if you're new, that's what we're trying to instill in you is, look, this is all about, whatever I design for you to do or block for you to do, you got to do it on that frequency. And when it works and it comes together beautifully, it's so, rewarding because it's really repetitious. Like if you mentioned Halloween 2, there's a couple of different scenes. There's the scene where Dr. Loomis is shooting Michael Myers at the beginning of the maze. There's a scene where Laurie's shooting Michael, and they're miming to my audio track. And of course, they're hearing it thousands and thousands of times, so they get really, really good at it. But when they execute those little short 10-second scenes well, it's super cool when you walk in that room and you're like, look, there's Laurie. Oh, she shot Michael. Oh, she perfectly shot him right through those two eyelids, just like in the movie where the blood's trickling down. That's the thing I always laughed about in Halloween 2 is, wow, she shot him and she perfectly hit him right through the eyes, and it just a little teeny trickle of blood came down. But we do that exact scene, and even the swiping sound effect that's in the production audio, they're doing perfectly. They do the blocking exactly the way I directed it, and they do it perfectly. So when you see that come to life and it's really good, or in the, Exorcist there's that room in The Exorcist where everything's coming to life, and that's a whole bunch of people we call blackout performers. They're literally people that are dressed in ninja costumes that are behind the scenes. And some of them are literally like opening and closing doors and, making different things happen in the room. But they're super important to the success of that maze. So you have to instill the passion in every performer, because the natural reaction if you're cast and you're like, hey, who are you cast as? Oh, I'm Freddy Krueger. Oh, great. Who are you? Oh, I'm Leatherface. Oh, who are you? I'm blackout performer number 26 in The Exorcist. You have to make sure they understand how important their role is, that each and every role. Like Guillermo had an idea last year in Crimson Peak where he just wanted a doorknob to jiggle, kind of like, like the Haunted Mansion when you're in the hallway. And I was like, well, I can't do that mechanically because, like, what if somebody grabs it? It has to be done by a performer. And they've got a camera and they've got a monitor so they can see behind the set. They can see where the people are and everything. But, that little touch, that was a Guillermo idea, and that little touch was really cool. It was really creepy. And that guy was really good at jiggling that doorknob. He did it every night, And when I took Guillermo through, he was like, look, the doorknob. And I was like, yeah, look at the doorknobs going. Isn't that awesome? But you have to make sure the person understands how important that is. When we did one of your movies, Insidious, there's the She's Got Your Baby guy, and think about going to an actor and going, okay, I need you to shave your head because he's bald. I need you to, you're not going to wear a shirt. You're going to be, you have nothing on from the waist up. And, we're going to, put all this makeup on you every night. And all you're going to do is stand there and lip sync to the audio from the film. And that's all you're going to do. And I remember that particular performer was all bummed because he was one of our veterans. And he was like, when I was going in to direct him that night, and I pulled him aside, I'm like, dude, if you do this right, it's going to be the scariest thing in this whole maze. And you're not going to actually try to scare anybody, but it's going to be so freaky. And that guy was so awesome. I cast him as Hollywood Harry in my film shoot this year because he was so awesome. But I would literally go behind people going through that maze and they'd be like, wow, look at that robot. It's so amazing. They didn't realize it was a person, and he just did it really well. So it shows no matter what your role is, if we can get everybody to feel that passion and, Exorcist this year is a good example of it because there's a whole lot of people behind the scenes that never get to be on stage, but they're really, really important to that maze. If you can get everybody feeling passionate about it, then the cast will bring it home for you, and that's exciting to see.
That's cool.
Yeah. Last question before we wrap up because we appreciate all your time. But have you seen the documentary, The American Scream?
Well, these days my viewing is pretty much like Paw Patrol.
Oh my God, I know Paw Patrol so well.
Oh, I do too. Trust me.
Oh my gosh, favorite character?
So
I like
funny.
Rocky.
Everybody's asking me right now, like, "Oh, have you seen this and have you seen that?" And I'm like, "Well, I've seen a lot of Paw Patrol.
Paw Patrol, swear.
I have two little girls.
Elric, how are you not watching Paw Patrol?
Chase is on the case.
Okay, there we go.
But the title right?
No,
the director.
The American,
The American Scream.
It's all
the
about
documentary about the home hunters.
About the home hunters.
Yeah.
No, just from the beginning of our conversation, it seems right up your alley.
But I did one that's hopefully going to be coming out soon called Haunters.
Yes.
Okay.
That's
John Schnitzer.
Yeah, John did.
Yeah.
that's I keep asking every time I run into John, I'm like, when is it going to come out? Because it's going to be great. He talked to everybody, and
I think it's going to be soon. I know that they're
I hope
doing
so,
some
because I'd love to see
screenings of
it.
Yeah.
But no, I'm sorry. Back to your question, the home haunters. I love home haunters, by the way, because
Yeah.
I was one.
No, it's like, I mean, it's fun. Just recommendation to you and to our
But
listeners.
you know what's
the
funny
American
is
Scream
the
great.
home haunters. They go to guest relations and they ask me questions at the park.
Yeah.
And they're like, literally, I got this one today, and he was like, "What brand of chainsaws do you use?" And it was a home haunter because he wants to know, like, hey, if it's good for horror nights, it must be good for my home haunt, you know. And they do that. I get stopped all the time in the park, and they're like, hey, our kids, you know, that are doing like one at their little elementary school or something, and they're like, you know, hey, I don't have a bunch of money, but what can I do? And I'm like, okay, I did this when I was 10. You know, you know all those Santa Claus figures that you see in stores that, like, you know, you put batteries in and they sing jingle bells and they just kind of move. All right, dig a hole, bury that thing in the hole, you know, put a mask over its head, pat it, and, you know, turn it on, and do like that with 6 of them. And, you know, they'll all be out of sync with each other, and they'll all be playing like Silent Night or something in different keys because none of them are in the same key. And it'll sound creepy as hell, and you'll have like a zombie looking like he's coming out of the ground. And, you know, there's little goofy things like that.
Yeah.
Everybody just got a tip.
There you go.
Yeah.
But so many kids do that. They come, you know, they'll like walk right up to you and going, I'm making my haunted house and I can't figure out how to do this. How do I do this? You know.
Is there any chance of getting a coffee table
Ask
book?
Dad first.
Is there any chance of getting a coffee table book that collects like the artwork that you're talking about from the concept designer?
It would be
stuff
cool.
Like that?
Yeah.
It
Something
certainly
that was
would
like a
be
little
cool.
exclusive to Universal Halloween Horror Nights.
It would be really cool. I mean, you know, somebody should do a reality show on it at some point. 'Cause
That's actually a good idea for the
it
start
is-
of the year.
Yeah, I mean, what goes into this thing, and I always call it the world's largest community theater because it's like all of us are theater rats. All of us are kids who, you know, came up in the theater, or, you know, we're theater students, and you know, it's this big elaborate event, but you know, it's still Chris and I at the end of the day. You know, we're still, you know, the only 2 guys that are doing the creative part of it. So. It's still that Judy Garland, let's put on a show, you know, Mickey Rooney thing, you know, just on a really big scale these days. Yeah.
I just want everyone to know he just blinked Phantasm at me. He blinked left and then right, which to me means next year Phantasm. Just how I take these things.
Yeah, we were also.
I've gotten that, but see, what are you going to throw the ball at him?
I know, right? It
While
would
we
be tough.
were standing in the middle of Simpsons land, we also questioned Treehouse of Horrors.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
that's a great
You
idea.
got to think about a dude wearing a Homer costume, you know, in a maze.
Oh, that's true.
That would be
it
really,
could
really
be
hot.
weird.
Yeah.
Yeah, and hot.
Yeah.
I would say
But,
the worst
you know-
maze would be Society by Brian Yuzna. It'd be the worst, gross, like all shunting and all body fluids. It just wouldn't be a good maze.
Gooey.
I just
It'd
think
be
it'd be
gooey.
funny to do something like, you know, do like an Ibsen play or something like that.
I want
Something
like
that people are trying to dig for
the
what it
dead
is. What
ringers
is it?
If they hadn't
maze.
have made Pride and Prejudice and zombies, I think it would have been really fun to do, like
Yeah.
Pride and Prejudice. You know?
It'd be fun. Have you ever thought about doing like a maze called Argento, or you know Stephen King The Maze, and it's just all of it in one maze? Like Argento to me would be awesome.
yeah.
You know, because not enough people might know Suspiria, but if it's all Argento,
Yeah.
you know, that's a freebie.
Still kind of.
Well, now's a good time to ask me because this is like we already have our, you know, long list of properties we're thinking about for next year.
So
Halloween
now,
3.
do you have you get locked? And you don't obviously not telling us, but do you lock any of this early, or is that not for another couple months?
yeah, there's things that are already locked.
Wow, cool.
Wow.
It's as I call it, the never-ending cycle of horror that the last 11 years. I have literally never stopped working on Horror Nights in 11 years.
Wow.
You know, it never ends. You know, it just you go from one into the next, right? You know, as soon as it's like a week or 2 into the event, your brain just switches over. And you start thinking about, okay, next year, you know, what are we going to do? Oh, who do I invite down that I can talk to? And you just go right back into that cycle.
That's
Wow.
wild.
Pretty cool gig, though, man.
Yeah.
Thank you for putting on such
Make
a
a lot
good
of people
show.
happy too, and not everyone can say that with what they do for a living. Like
Yeah.
the people who go there really have a good time.
So
know,
go
it's
next
cool.
year, see Purge versus Predator, and it will be great.
And go this year, too.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, when's it run to? Like, that's obviously key information. When's it wrap up for the year?
Last year we actually blew past Halloween and went the first weekend in November, which nobody does, and we did it last year, and we're doing it again.
As you should.
So we're one day we'll just keep going to Christmas, I guess.
yeah.
You know.
Keep Krampus for Christmas because that would be a good time. You know?
But no, we'll do Halloween, and then we'll come back for the Friday and Saturday right after that. And in November, we'll be doing Halloween Horror Nights in November again. But it's cool because our fans don't want to. They get so depressed, you know. As soon as like Horror Nights ends, the collective like social media depression kicks in, and all the fans who just are year round engaged in this. You could just feel it out there in social media. They're just like, I can't, because they'll be like 365 days. They'll start their little counters, of how long it's going to be till they can see Horror Nights again. So it's cool. I mean, that we're extremely lucky to have such passionate, dedicated fans that have supported this event, year after year after year. It is an honor to get to do it for them because, without them, I wouldn't have a gig. So
Well, congratulations on this year. It's a fantastic.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Check it out. Thank you for coming on.
Yeah, it's my pleasure. Thank you.
Next week.